Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy. You can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsey Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Hi fans, I'm here today with Vanessa Fraser. She's a professional runner. She attended Scotts Valley High School in Northern California and graduated a two-time Division IV state champion in cross country. Then she went on to fulfill her childhood dream of attending Stanford University, where she was a seven-time All-American. In 2018, she signed a professional contract with Nike and joined the Bowerman Track Club. And she now holds a personal best of 14 minutes, 48.51 seconds in the 5,000 meters, which she ran in Boston in February 2020. After having bilateral Achilles surgery last year, she has her sights set on some big goals over the next few years. And Vanessa, can't thank you enough for joining on the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I have something funny to share. I feel like we probably don't have much in common, but I have a few things. We both have blonde hair, both runners, although at a very different level. And I also had Haglund's deformity.
Oh, no way. You're in the club.
I'm in the Haglund's deformity club.
It's actually, it's a pretty big club in the runner community. I just realize more and more how many people suffer with it. And just like after, openly sharing my experience last summer with the surgery, I get so many messages from people who say they're struggling with it and they're trying everything and they're considering surgery. So, it's a bummer because it's a really brutal thing to have to deal with. And ultimately, usually you do have to get surgery. So I'm like, I feel for all these people that deal with it, but it's also, misery loves company. It's nice to be able to relate and help each other through it.
Totally. And when I had it, I didn't know anybody else that had it. It was this novel thing. So yeah, if we could start there with it's been a big 2 years, a year and a half, almost 2 year journey for you, right? Am I getting the timeline?
I guess the beginning of the timeline when I started feeling pain was 4 years ago. I got an MRI on my right heel 4 years ago this past June. So pain-wise, it's been a long, slow, painful process. But yeah, I had the surgery in May of 2020. So as far as that recovery, I'm, 14 and a half months into that.
Yeah, just a little over a year.
Yeah.
And it is for people who don't know your story, like you were saying, you were having pain for a long time in your Achilles, both Achilles. You're a professional runner. So kind of backtracking though, you weren't necessarily planning on having the surgery because it was an Olympic year. Mm-hmm. And so you were really pushing through a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I developed the pain and the Haglunds kind of started to form and grow in the later years of college for me, but it wasn't to a debilitating degree. I was able to run through it and just kind of manage it. And then I turned professional in the summer of 2018. And over my first year and a half as a pro, it really started to get a lot worse, which is understandable. Just the way it progresses with all the load I was putting on it, training at a more intense level at higher volume, it really started to get progressively worse. And it was just crazy how the timing worked out because at that point, I was throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it, like shockwave therapy, all different physical therapy, all the different anti-inflammatories, oral, topical, dexamethasone, through Ionto, which is a common treatment. And everything was just kind of like band-aiding it together. And then I got saline injections in January of 2020 that actually took the pain away the most I'd ever experienced. And that was kind of what allowed me to have this big breakthrough race in February when I ran 1448, was that I was finally, temporarily pain-free. And it was such an amazing feeling. And I really do believe that's why I was able to have a big personal best, because when you can finally get that monkey off your back and not be so consumed by the pain. And I mean, it affects everything. It affects obviously your enjoyment, but it's affecting my stride and my ability to push off, correctly with power from the ground. So that really opened my eyes to what was possible when I wasn't feeling pain. But unfortunately, it was a short-term solution and the pain came back, about 6 weeks after I'd gotten those injections. But I'm still grateful for that because it allowed me to go have that big race. But then the pain's coming back and I'm thinking, at this point, the Olympics are still on. I have this big race that basically makes me a big contender to make the team, which is really exciting. But the pain comes back. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just keep getting these injections every 4 to 6 weeks. If that's the amount of time that it buys me, I'm totally fine going and getting those saline injections, which basically like creates space between the tendon and the bone. And the reason why Haglund's is so painful is it's rubbing against the tendon and inflammation is playing off of each other. So by separating kind of these painful little, the doctor says, neovascularizations that occur in between the tendon and the Haglund's, which is like these really painful new little nerves in there. By separating them, it's just like less friction essentially. So anyway, I'm thinking I'll do that every 4 to 6 weeks. And that was basically right when COVID hit and basically right when everything shut down. And it was to the point where I wasn't even able to go get those injections because it's like considered an elective procedure. So then,
oh yeah, and you couldn't do elective surgeries during COVID.
Yeah. So then that ended up being a big bummer because as soon as I found out the Olympics were postponed and the pain had just escalated and gotten so much worse, I realized that was my golden window of opportunity to really address it and get a longer term solution. But because elective procedures were shut down, I still had to wait like almost 2 months, which was really difficult because I didn't want to give up 2 months of training knowing I was going to take time off after surgery. So I'm just training through the worst pain on both sides of my feet. So waiting patiently for things to open up to the point where I could get an elective procedure. Luckily, my surgeon was in Arizona. So I was kind of also looking for surgeons in specific states that were going to open up sooner. So that was another part of the decision-making process that was challenging. It's like, okay, I'm going to look in Texas and Arizona because they're going to open up sooner than Oregon and where I was. But yeah, anyway, so that was kind of the few months leading into the surgery, was just a wild time for everyone and extra wild for me juggling that and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's funny reflecting on it because I guess now we're not really done with it completely, but there was so much that we were thinking, oh, if the world shut down, we have time, we can address these things in our life that we need to, but we actually couldn't because everything was shut down. Like, what a perfect time, if there is a good time, to have a surgery. But it took a lot of effort because elective surgeries weren't being done. Certain states had such rules and regulations, so that I didn't even think about that for you.
Yeah. And there was a sense of urgency because, we're just over a year out from the trials, which when you're talking about operating on both feet, that's actually not very much time. And so I felt like every day that was passing by, I was like, I just want to get it done so I have longer time to get prepared for the trials. And so it was this it was actually hard to be patient with that, just knowing the timeline. But it was great that I could get it done when I did, as good of timing as any. But yeah, ultimately, I think the comeback was and is a little bit more arduous than I anticipated. I had a pretty optimistic mindset, and there are a lot of things that have gone really well, and I'm grateful to be pain-free now and have had glimpses of really good training, but just being able to string together consistent training and to get back to the level racing that I was at before the surgery has been a little bit more complicated and circuitous. And I'm kind of still on that path to try to get back to where I was before. But I think that's kind of the way it goes. It's a lot to ask of yourself to get back to the very top level.
Yeah. Injuries are so tough in 1,000 different ways, but it's okay, there's a solution. I can have a procedure done and it will make things better. Being pain-free is the goal. We know you can run through the pain, but that's not the point. The point is to run pain-free and to be able to keep your career going, right? This was happening right at the start of your professional career. So addressing this sooner so that you can keep your career going and do so in less pain is the answer. But it's not just because there's a solution doesn't mean it's an easy one.
Totally.
Yeah. I would love to pick up because you were able to compete at the Olympic trials, the US Olympic trials this year. And that's huge. I know, for you coming off before your surgery, you had that really great performance, and it's really difficult to have surgery on both ankles and rehab and get back to that level. But that was your first race back, right? Just a month or so ago.
Well, I guess it was in May. So it's been 2.5 months, I guess.
Oh gosh, time is flying.
I know. So I had two races before the Olympic trials, which was good. I actually would have preferred more and more time, but still good to get a couple in before the trials. Yeah. And then 2 races at the trials, being a prelims and a finals. So yeah, it's a constant balance as an athlete where you're almost always trying to recognize the positives and what you did well, but really rarely are you not left wanting more and feeling like you executed perfectly. And we're just so hard on ourselves too. So that adds to it, and such perfectionists. But I really did feel like the disappointing thing about the trials was, even given that I had surgery or prior, I felt like even in those circumstances, I didn't have my best potential race. And that's all you could ever ask for, whether you're winning or making the Olympic team or PRing, whatever it is. Even if it's not those things, on that day, given your circumstances that you had leading up to that moment, you want to feel like you can run to your potential in that moment. And I don't feel like that happened. And that's the reason why I kind of left the trials feeling disappointed. But of course, it's so important to still celebrate what you were able to do, and celebrate, for me, the fact that I was in the finals at the Olympic trials, and that was still a win given my circumstance. But there were a lot of other factors why I don't think I was at my potential on that particular day. Just the couple months leading into the trials, I just wasn't really feeling like myself. And I had some really, really awesome training in March and April where I was showing signs of some of the best workouts I'd had ever, some of the best fitness I'd seen. And so I was getting really excited in April, I could have an opportunity to really contend for a spot on this team. And that was always the goal that kept me going through the whole injury. It kept me going when I was biking with 2 boots on last summer. Was I kept imagining that moment of trying to make the team and being in the mix of the top 3 at the trials. So I started to sort of like taste that this could become a reality, just seeing how I was training. And I'm training with the two best 5K runners in the country, my teammates, Elise Cranny and Krista Schweitzer. So it's like, I know what it takes to be at that level. And, I was still behind them in practice, but showing signs of improvement every week. And so I think it was really the difficult thing was that in May, I just like something totally switched in me where I just all of a sudden wasn't able to do the workouts that I was doing in April. And I wasn't like feeling good. I wasn't feeling like myself. And there's so many factors to that. I mean, part of it is I had this big injury layoff. And so it could be related to that. And that I just couldn't sustain a high level of training for a long period of time. Like my body just wasn't adapted to that intensity and load. And like I could get to that fitness level, but I couldn't really hold it for a super long time because it was just a lot all at once to accelerate into that. I've struggled at altitude in the past, and we're at altitude, and I had been at altitude for 5 weeks, and I'd noticed that like usually around 5 weeks at altitude, I just really started to bonk and struggle. So we ended up coming down to sea level, which helped, but I don't know if it was just too late. Like I had already gone so far into this hole of just overworking and possibly under recovering. And, I think in the past, I've been somebody who has been sensitive to getting some symptoms of overtraining syndrome. And it's just, that's such a hard thing to diagnose because it's
totally
vague. But it was pretty consistent with the way that I was feeling. So, whatever it was, I do think that kind of played a role into me just feeling really flat and not like myself racing at the trials, which is a bit of a bummer. And everybody was so quick to say like, well, you had surgery a year ago. And I'm like, yeah, that definitely could have played a role. But I think it was something bigger than that with my training and my energy levels and physiologically. So that's always disappointing too, but kind of one of those things that you can't really anticipate, and you don't necessarily always have time to react and recover, but hopefully will be a lesson moving forward to just, not pushing over that line to in the season and training cycles.
Yeah, Vanessa, I think it's just amazing everything that you've accomplished over the past year and a half of getting a PR, addressing your injuries head on, getting it done, thinking about the long-term solution and not these quick fixes, suffering through all the pain, pushing yourself to rehab so quickly, dealing with all the emotional stress of it all, and then still showing up, towing the line, for that race. It maybe wasn't the race that you wanted and it wasn't you at your best, but you got yourself there and you went through a lot to get there. And it's so impressive and inspiring. And there's so many athletes that go through injuries that just can really resonate with your story and feeling like I'm not where I want to be yet, but your process isn't done. Your journey's not done. And like you mentioned, there's injury is one thing, but your health, your overtraining, your nutrition, we can talk about just taking care of yourself. Everything plays a factor in getting that time that you're shooting for.
Totally. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I'm impressed and inspired.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment because I want to let you know about an amazing discount for an awesome company that I partner with, Inside Tracker. In fact, in this episode, we talk about blood biomarkers, which is part of what Inside Tracker does and why I want to tell you about them. They help you optimize your body using science and technology to deliver ultra-personalized guidance. They use cutting-edge algorithmic engines to analyze your blood, DNA, lifestyle, and workout habits, and it's all available to you right now. You can hop online and order your plan and use the code RiseUpNutrition. one word, all capital letters, for a whopping 25% off. Seriously, that is a good savings, 25% off. And I hope you know that I don't advertise for too many products on this podcast because I really value personalized and individualized nutrition and care, but that's exactly why I really value Inside Tracker. It helps put health into your own hands, and you do get individualized results. It's based on your blood work. I use Inside Tracker myself. I use it on many of my clients, and if you use the code RiseUpNutrition for your Inside Tracker order, regardless of being a personal client or not, then I'm always happy to consult with you via email if you need more nutrition support. So head to InsideTracker.com to learn more. Use the code RiseUpNutrition. More details in the show notes. Get that 25% off, amazing discount. And let's get back to the episode and this awesome conversation. And I did want to talk about your nutrition and see, like, throughout the past year. Oh, we could talk about any piece of your nutrition journey that you want to share, but was there anything specifically you did throughout injury, recovery, rehab that you found helpful, or maybe that you didn't do that you wish you did when it comes to your fueling?
Yeah. Oh, I think nutrition is just so interesting. And the more time I spend in the sport, and especially as a professional, the more I realize, like, how little I know and how much room there is to optimize and improve it. As far as, like, during my actual injury recovery, I think the best thing that I could have done and that I did well and that I think has been my strength in a lot of my nutrition journey is just, like, fueling the body, like, make sure I'm fueling a lot. And I've always been very intuitive about that fueling and not super calculating, but just like, I'm hungry, I'm craving this, I'm going to eat this. I'm just going to eat basically like whatever I want when I feel like it. And of course it's, I'm an athlete. I have a balanced approach to it. I'm, eating all the food groups, but I'm also not like limiting anything. And I've always been an advocate of, like, having dessert, having ice cream. I'm not having that all day, every day, or I'm not having like excessive amounts, but just like nourishing those cravings whenever I have them. And just, I think it kind of all goes back to, this is something kind of interesting that I've never really talked about before because it hasn't come up, but like genetically, as a lot of runners are, like, I have a very fast metabolism. I'm naturally very, very thin, and I'm also pretty tall. And so when I was going through my growth spurts in middle school and early high school and kind of just like shooting upward, I was, not intentionally at all. Like, I luckily didn't have any body image problems, but just kind of naturally like shot up before I was able to kind of catch up width-wise. And I was extremely underweight and was actually like not allowed to compete my freshman year track season because I was too underweight. And I'm so glad that I had a doctor that was, on top of that and advising me of that. Like, I went in for the checkup and it was just like, you are not going to be allowed to exercise until you get your BMI up a little bit higher. And it was just something I'd never been educated on. I didn't, like, same with my parents, like, they just didn't know how to recognize that. And here I am as a 9th grader, like, running cross country and track, and I could have had, a lot of damage done to my body had I not been able to take a step back. And it was really hard not to compete my freshman year of high school, but it was so important that my body was able to catch up. And I think I'd been like maybe a little bit impacted in that I've been misinformed in like health and nutrition classes that I had in 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade. We had a health class and it was just very focused on like being healthy, which I think is great for like the average kid who maybe could tend to eat too much junk food. But like for someone who's already naturally really thin, who's going through a growth spurt and who's a runner, I like did not need to like be told that I needed to like focus all my energy on eating fruits and vegetables. Like, I think I needed to be told, like, I need to eat a lot of calories. And so, then I kind of got guidance from a nutritionist, and I had these resources presented to me because we're like, you need to gain weight. You need to gain weight fast. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but I think like kind of the goal was to gain like 15 pounds in the span of a couple months, which is really hard to do. And that's why they were like, you need to cut out exercise pretty much completely. And then I had the guidance, and, that totally saved me from having long-term issues. And that's always been, coaches in high school and college have always had the approach of like the long game in mind, which is I'm so lucky just from a training perspective, but also from a health perspective, that those developmental years to have been able to get on top of that so early was just like huge. And, probably a huge reason why I like had never had a bone injury all through high school or college, like was extremely healthy. But anyway, going back to just like kind of my nutrition philosophy over the years, because of that experience, it was like taking a step back from like these specific ideals of health and just like fueling the body and getting whatever calories I needed to like put on that weight. And it was just kind of like, oh, calories are calories. My body needs a lot of them right now to be healthy. And in order to gain that weight, I just kind of was like eating whatever I could stomach to like, I was eating to the point of being I remember I'd be like so full and bloated, just like pushing through the wall. But I was like, I need to gain this weight so I can get back to running. Like I'm, eat an extra stick of, or like an extra like cube of butter here. And I'm going to eat this like crazy protein shake and just like finding calories wherever I could. And so I really think back to that. I'm like, I think that kind of shaped the way I thought about fueling, and just like as a runner, just not being concerned necessarily all the time about where those calories are coming from. Just like, I need calories. Like, I don't care what they are. Like, I just need to make sure my body's getting fuel. I'm not saying I don't eat healthy, but just like,
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Just like, get the freaking fuel. And I approach injury the same way, because I'm like, my body's working so hard to heal my heels. And even with cross training, it's different than running, but like, I need to make sure I'm fueling like crazy so that like I can recover quicker. So yeah, that's kind of just like been my philosophy over the years. And that's the thing that I think has worked really well for me and helped me stay healthy. There are other areas where I think that weren't necessarily in the injury part of things, but just in the comeback and training as a professional at a high level and training at altitude, that I think really has room for optimization. I've heard things about how, women have their insulin levels are affected differently at altitude. I don't know the specific research, but, and also just like how many carbs you burn at altitude is different than sea level.
It
and
is.
Just how much I struggle at altitude. I'm like, the altitude nutrition could use some help. And again, when I'm at altitude, I'm just like trying to fill my body with whatever as much as I can just to keep up. But I think that still has room and then for improvement. And then I've also just been finding out like the timing of eating breakfast and working out has been really interesting to me. Like in college, I would always eat kind of right before I run. And then I was realizing like as a pro, I started to just feel like really hypoglycemic and shaky on my morning runs. And just like realizing, if you eat too close, like your blood sugars crash, they spike and then they crash after you eat. And I should really be eating like a couple hours before I work out, and kind of figuring out that timing of things. So I feel like I'm just still learning and optimizing so much, and there's still room for that. So that's something that I'm kind of like currently trying to improve on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because you're a professional runner doesn't mean your nutrition is like done solid. It's something you're still working on. And training at altitude, training at the level that you are is a progression from college. So your nutrition changes with that. And it's something you're constantly keeping up with. And how you were feeling in college was different than high school, which was different than, ninth grade for you. I love that you were able to share that story. And something you said that's really key is like how important those developmental years are. And I think just for any young athletes listening to this right now, remembering that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, we can extend a little bit both ways, but like they are developmental years. And as much as it's important to be on your high school team, your body has to be fully developed to handle training. Like you can play as a kid, that's fine, but you still have so much growing to do. And for you in 9th grade, it seems like really like if you were going to start training, well, you already were a runner, but like training at a higher level when your body was still developing can create massive problems. And so taking that step back, thinking about the long term once again, which is kind of like a theme I'm getting from you, which is good.
Totally. Yeah.
And just recognizing, and it's so good that you got the advice met with a nutritionist to give you something different, because we've all heard that in health class about eat your fruits and veggies. And trust me, those are important, but nutrition's individualized. And that wasn't the right messaging for you, especially at that time and for many, many years to come, because your training just progressed and progressed. And we all have differences with our own body types. So, just taking that into respect and learning, wait, really objectively, I need calories. I need a fuel. If I want to keep up, I need to get my body weight up to a good place. And then I need to just keep fueling. That's what I'm hearing from you too. It's just your body type, your training level is always with nutrition, like keep up, keep up, keep up.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the other thing that's interesting about those developmental years, especially, is obviously like disordered eating is a big issue in distance running as a sport. But I also think that it's interesting how, you might not have psychologically disordered eating, but you could still need a lot of guidance and help with your nutrition. And, you might not be healthy. It might just be because of like a lack of knowledge or a lack of the right guidance, and genetically you're thin or you run a lot and you're just like underfueled because you don't know any better, because you don't know what your body needs while you're growing and while you're running. And so also looking at it as, of course, hopefully people who struggle with disordered eating can get the help that they need, but also people who don't necessarily like clinically have that issue could still need help and guidance, and that there's like,
yeah,
especially at that age, it's just so important to make sure that you're like growing and fueling at a proper rate to match that output of your running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people, there's stigmas, which I want to destigmatize it, but there's stigmas associated with eating disorders. But even if it's not a clinical or a psychological, because those are two things that kind of diagnose it, right? It's the psychological component, it's the clinical component. But we can have lack of knowledge, we can have underfueling, we can have just over exercise unintentionally. And all of those can manifest themselves into needing that nutrition support and help. And so whatever you want to call it, disordered eating, eating disorder, or just, one of the newer terms is red S, energy deficiency, female athlete triad. I'm always saying like anywhere on the spectrum. That's what I say. Anywhere on the spectrum of disordered eating, you need help with your eating. It has to be addressed. And those developmental years are a key time for that, for your health. And also what I'm picking up from you, Vanessa, is it's something that's carried through to you throughout the years of like, you've continued to just view food very objectively. I need these calories. I need this fuel. I have to keep up. Or during recovery, I need to keep up with my nourishment of my body. Or while at altitude, I need to put more energy in because I'm not feeling good at this altitude. So that's kind of like created your nutrition philosophy from a young age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's awesome. And right, your journey with nutrition is always developing. It is for all of us. And when you start putting yourself in different situations like injury, or you put yourself in altitude or training at your highest level, you're going to be faced with new issues. Do you have any, like, I don't know if you do, but just interested to know, do you have any habits or foods that you always go to on like race day or things that make you feel really prepared for showing up?
Yeah, race day I feel like is pretty boring, but just like usually we race in the night, so just trying to have a big breakfast, like eggs and a bagel. I love bagels and cream cheese. They just always make me feel good. Like that's what I typically have in the morning, or oatmeal, but I honestly like hate oatmeal. I just think it's, obviously a good classic runner fuel, but I had oatmeal like every day growing up and I totally got burnt out on the texture of it. So I'm always trying to kind of like find ways to make it exciting, but it still really just doesn't do it for me. But yeah, just, trying to get like a carb heavy breakfast plus some protein on race day. And then usually just like a light turkey sandwich or peanut butter and jelly in the afternoon. And then we'll kind of like snack up until I go to the track on like pretzels and things like that. Like I kind of like keep snacking a little bit because I just hate feeling hungry going to the line. I was like eating goldfish on the way to the track when I ran my 5K PR, which was just like happened to be like what I grabbed, like an easy little, salty, carby snack that sounded good. So,
I love that.
Yeah. But, something that I just like is kind of a go-to when I feel like I really need just fuel, and that always sounds good to me, like at altitude, is Annie's mac and cheese.
So good.
So good. Yeah. Yeah.
And they have just the little microwavable cups too that are really convenient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You listed a lot of foods that I'm constantly saying to my athletes all the time. Bagels are an athlete's and a runner's best friend. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, pretzels, oatmeal's on there, but I'm with you that like I get burnt out from it fast.
Mm-hmm.
If I have oatmeal 2 days in a row, I'm done with it for the next month.
Mm-hmm. Totally feel that. Yeah.
But I like sneaking oats in different ways. Like I'll make my own energy bites with oatmeal, or I'll make meatloaf with oatmeal, or I'll throw oatmeal in a smoothie. Like those are other ways I get oatmeal in, but like a bowl of it's such a good runner's fuel.
Yeah, it is.
When I get burnt out, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I like those different creative ways to get some oats in, because it's obviously like a good whole grain, but can't do the texture.
Yeah. But no, I always like asking, it's good for people to hear, especially in a diet culture that is over promoting fruits and veggies and like clean eating with big air quotes around it. So it's always just refreshing to hear a professional athlete be like, I eat bagels, I eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I eat mac and cheese. And these are things that I really want our listeners to grasp onto and know it's okay. It's actually good to fuel your body with these things. If we're learning something from Vanessa on this episode, it's keep up with your fueling, keep nourishing your body, look objectively at what your body needs and get it in. Whatever the easiest way is, goldfish as you're walking up to the starting line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I really am such a proponent of ice cream, like especially as dessert. I feel like at altitude, my teammate and I always noticed that we felt a lot better waking up in the morning if we had ice cream the night before, just because we had like I don't know, sleeping at altitude, you burn more calories doing everything. And like I always wake up just feeling overly hungry and like dizzy in the morning at altitude. And if I had that kind of high fat snack, whether it's ice cream or something else, but like really getting fat in before bed, it like sustained me a little bit better. At least like how I felt waking up in the morning, I felt better. So
Yeah, it depends what level altitude you're at. So I'm not going to spit off exact statistics, but your metabolism increases. So if you're at 5,000 feet versus, 10,000 feet, which that would be like mountaineering and everything. But I used to work with special operations. So I was doing lots of nutrition for like extreme things like that. And your metabolism can increase by 30% or more at certain altitudes. So yeah, if you're running on sea level and then you just go to altitude, your metabolism is increasing. And the majority of that metabolism increase, a lot of it is from carbohydrates, right? We're breathing more. If you're running, you're going to be in an anaerobic state more often because you're struggling to get enough oxygen to get you into that aerobic state. Now, when you can get into your steady state aerobic, we're going to rely on those fats a lot more too. So those are two things, just as a little like mild knowledge bomb being dropped here. You do need more calories at altitude. You're going to need way more carbs if you're training at altitude, and getting those calories from a bit more fats is going to be really helpful too. So go for Vanessa's tip of the ice cream the night before a workout if you're training at altitude, because you're going to get the sugars and the fats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah, we stay at like 8,500 feet. So our metabolisms are cranking up.
They're cranking.
Yeah.
And it can be an adjustment, right? Because if you're used to eating a certain way, or like, this is generally what lunch looks like, and then your first 2 weeks at altitude, you have to make that adjustment of, oh, I need to make my portions bigger, or I need to add in an extra snack. And sometimes we don't recognize that right away, whether it's going to altitude or even like, I'm thinking about college athletes, how they were eating all summer and then, oh my gosh, it's preseason training camp. And you just like, double your intensity,
yeah.
and you're making that big shift. The sooner you can recognize, wait, my nutrition needs to follow it and make a change as well, the better. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Vanessa, it's been awesome chatting with you and hearing about your recovery journey. I know you mentioned just after the Olympic trials, kind of reflecting and recognizing there's some things in life I may be overtraining. So kind of calming down a bit right now. But is there anything, that you're focusing on now and for your future when you kind of forecast out for the next year, few years, of what some of your professional running goals might be?
Yeah, right now it's kind of all about really recovering from the last year, because I always say, like, an injury, even though you take time off from running, it's not a break. You're mentally so turned on to trying to recover. And then once you get to the point where you're allowed to cross train, you're not running yet, but you're like, that takes almost more mental and emotional energy to like get through all those cross training days. So, and then I had another little injury in January this past year. So I've had like some little breaks from running, but never really a mental break since, honestly, probably fall of 2019 when we take our typical end of the season break. So I'm really focusing on just letting my body and my mind have a little bit of a break and recover. But I'm also thinking about ways to be better for next year and not get into maybe that overtraining hole that I got into this summer. And I actually just started working with Inside Tracker after I saw that you had Jonathan on your podcast. And I know so many people who have worked with Inside Tracker. So I thought that was a great way to start, just kind of like get a little bit more detailed look into my blood work and see if there's anything I can optimize there. And yeah, just always finding ways to get a little bit better, whether it's with strength training or nutrition or other forms of recovery. And I really think that after this nice long break that I'm taking right now, my body's really going to be ready to handle the training this next year, and just looking to get back, to that pre-surgery fitness and feeling like myself again. And, hopefully more PRs in my future. And hopefully, we've got a busy few years in track coming up with World Championships in Eugene next summer, another World Championship year after that, and then it'll be Paris again, Olympics again already. So I think
it's going to come up fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 years of just like trying to get better and get back in the mix of things and try to make teams. But yeah, mostly just hoping to like feel like myself again and just find those areas for improvement, because that's really all you can do.
Right. Yeah. You have pushed so hard over the past 12, 14 months. And so just addressing all of that. I love Inside Tracker. I use them for a lot of my clients, use them for myself. I saw on their Facebook group that you did a post this week, and I was like, I'm going to be talking to her this Friday. So I think that's wonderful to do that deeper dive and just address, okay, this is where I'm at, and we've got a busy 3 years coming up. So where can I keep improving while not overworking myself?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. It's a huge one. And I wish you all the best for that, Vanessa. Like I said, I'm so impressed with your journey the entire way, but definitely throughout this past year. And I'll be rooting for you to just take care of yourself and get back to where we all know you can be. Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I always like to end this with a few rapid fire questions if you're down to play along.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. If there's one food that you could eat every single day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it, what would it be?
Probably have to be the mac and cheese. Yeah. Since I was a kid.
Delicious. Annie's specifically, or just all mac and cheese?
Either Annie's or my like mom's homemade recipe. Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, mom's homemade recipes are the best. All right. Seems like an obvious one, but you might throw us for a curveball. What's your favorite sport to participate in?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously running, but like something that I love to do that I'm not able to do while I'm running is skiing. So I love downhill skiing.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's one of the things of being such a high level athlete is it's like can't put yourself in harm's way, can't injure yourself, especially something like skiing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll find those times where you can do it and enjoy it.
Totally.
What about as a spectator? Is there a sport that you really enjoy watching as a spectator?
Well, specifically like Stanford football. I'm just a big Stanford sports fan, and I really like basketball as well.
Yeah. Yep. Coming from Stanford, there's a lot of sports you can root for.
Yeah.
All right. And our final question is, if there's a female athlete out there that you want to give a shout out to for being especially fierce, fit, and fueled, as we call it here, fierce in mindset, fit from the inside out, and fueled for their sport, who would that be? And just give them a little shout out.
Well, I'd have to shout out my roommate, college teammate, current teammate, best friend, Elise Cranny, who just competed in the 5K at the Olympics. And she's been pretty vocal, about educating people on Red S and her own kind of journey in college about figuring out proper fueling and kind of learning that she needed to improve on that. And after struggling with bone injuries in college, and I think she's just a great advocate and a great image of like a healthy fueled runner.
Couldn't agree more. It's always great to give someone like Elise Cranny a shout out, and you guys are such good friends too.
Yeah.
And teammate.
Yeah.
I think you're both role models in fueling, and I think our listeners learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and thanks for listening. But before I let you go, I have free resources that you can have access to right away, right now, so that you can start fueling your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. First, I have your Red S recovery race. If you've ever wondered if you might be struggling with Red S, curious to learn more, or know you have Red S and are looking to recover fast, then you can head to www.riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS and download the Red S Recovery Race. See how you place and figure out the next steps to recovery. Plus, while there, I have a few other great resources for you, including 3 nutrition secrets that every elite athlete swears by, and access to our private Facebook community, Female Athlete Nutrition. So again, to gain access to all of this, head to riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS. That's /REDS. And you can gain access and get the help you need fast. Too many girls and women and female athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. Become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and I'll see you next time.